guess. Okay, this is the 51st paragraph of the introduction. It's talking about Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, because you have to understand Lord Chaitanya in order to understand about Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Lord Chaitanya, it's very difficult to understand the Bhagavatam without Lord Chaitanya's mercy, because he is the personification of the Bhagavatam. He's the root of our disciplic succession, you know, so we have to understand everything through him. All right, we're just going to start. We'll take turns reading, okay?
Okay.
The Lord continued, Srila Vyasadeva has summarized the direct meanings of the mantras and the Upanishads in this Vedanta Sutra. Unfortunately, you do not take their direct meaning. You indirectly interpret them in a different way. He's talking to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. That's this Brahmin who was in Jagannath Puri, you know. He just got done explaining the Vyasadeva, explaining the entire Vedanta Sutra to him for 7 days straight. And he didn't ask any questions. And Sarvabhauma was asking Lord Chaitanya why he didn't ask any questions. He was just sitting there. And so he said, I can understand the Vedanta Sutra very well, but you're interpreting the Vedanta Sutra in a different way. You don't take the direct meaning as it appears from the book, but you're interpreting them in your own way. So that's the context of this. So go ahead with the second paragraph there.
The authority of the Vedas is unchallengeable and stands without any question of doubt. And whatever is stated in the Vedas must be accepted completely, otherwise one challenges the authority of the Vedas. The conch shell and cow dung are bone and stool of two living beings. But because they have been recommended by the Vedas as pure, people accept them as such because of the authority of the Vedas.
Okay, I'll read the next one. I'll read the next one. We'll take turns from each paragraph. I know they're only like one sentence, but we'll take turns each. When there's a paragraph break in there, we'll just take turns reading that paragraph. The idea is that one cannot set his imperfect reason above the authority of the Vedas. The order of the Vedas must be obeyed as they stand, without any mundane reasoning. The so-called followers of the Vedic injunctions make their own interpretations of the Vedic injunctions, and thus they establish different parties and sects of the Vedic religion. Lord Buddha directly denied the authority of the Vedas, and he established his own religion. Only for this reason, the Buddhist religion was not accepted by the strict followers of the Vedas. But those who are so-called followers of the Vedas are more harmful than the Buddhists. Okay, Zoe's on right now. Hey, Zoe, you finally made it.
Holy heck, you have no idea. Okay.
Holy mackerel. It's a miracle.
It is. Well, just in time.
I don't know
right?
what happened to Alan was trying to get in. He was on before, but then I don't know what happened. Anyway, maybe he'll join later. We're just finishing up this paragraph on the screen. Can you see the screen now?
Send them the link.
Yeah, it's so hard to see on my stupid little phone, which is why I like doing it on my Surface Pro, but I don't have the Messenger app on my Surface. Okay, yep, I see it.
Okay, I'm just finishing up this paragraph, and then you can read the next one. I'll put it up on the top where I'm reading it now.
Okay.
Yeah. The Buddhists have the courage to deny the Vedas directly, but the so-called followers of the Vedas have no courage to deny the Vedas, although indirectly they disobey all the injunctions of the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya condemned this. You can read this next paragraph, starting with the examples given by the Lord.
The examples given by the Lord of the conch shell and the cow dung are very much appropriate, in this connection. If one argues that since cow dung is pure, the stool of a learned Brahmana is still more pure, his argument will not be accepted. Cow dung is accepted, and the stool of a highly posted Brahmanan is rejected. That the Lord continued.
Okay, go ahead, Melissa.
The Vedic injunctions are self-authorized, and if some mundane creature adjusts the interpretations of the Vedas, he defies their authority. It is foolish to think oneself is more intelligent than Srila Vyasadeva. He has already expressed himself in his sutras, and there is no need of help from personalities of lesser importance. His work, the Vedanta Sutra, is dazzling as the midday sun. And when someone tries to give his own interpretations on the self-effulgent sun-like Vedanta Sutra, he attempts to cover his sun with the cloud of his imagination.
Yeah, it's really, really important that we just hear from these authorities and not think that we can express our own ideas. It's like Vyasadeva is a literary incarnation of God himself. And so his knowledge is self-effulgent and self-illuminating. And so if you try to interpret or bring light on the message of Vyasadeva through your own tiny brain, it's like a glowworm trying to illuminate the sun. That's a similar analogy that's often used. Quote, the Vedas and Puranas are one and the same in purpose. They ascertain the absolute truth, which is greater than everything else. The absolute truth is ultimately realized as the absolute personality of Godhead with absolute controlling power. As such, the absolute personality of Godhead must be completely full of opulence, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Yet, the transcendental personality of Godhead is astonishingly ascertained as impersonal. Go ahead, Zoe. Take it off mute.
Yeah, sorry. The impersonal description of the absolute truth in the Vedas is given to nullify the mundane conception of the absolute whole. Personal features of the Lord are completely different from all kinds of mundane features. The living entities are all individual persons, and they are all parts and parcels of the supreme whole. If the parts and parcels are individual persons, the source of their emanation must not be impersonal. He is the supreme person amongst all the relative persons.
Yeah, I mean, if we're all persons, right? We're all persons. So the source of our existence must also be a person. How can the source be more than or less than the effect? He's the cause of all causes. So since we're persons, he must also have personality. Otherwise, it just doesn't make any logical sense. Okay, go ahead, Melissa.
The impersonal description of the absolute truth in the Vedas is given to nullify the mundane conception of the absolute whole. Personal features of the Lord are completely different from all kinds of mundane features. The living entities are all individual persons, and they are all parts and parcels of the supreme whole. If the parts and parcels are individual persons, the source of their emanation must not be impersonal. He is the supreme person amongst all relative persons.
Okay. Quote, the Vedas inform us that from him, Brahman, everything emanates, and on him everything rests. And after annihilation, everything merges in him only. Therefore, he is the ultimate dative, causative, and accommodating cause of all causes. And these causes cannot be attributed to an impersonal object. So,
Vedas inform us that he alone became many, and when he so desires, he glances over material nature. Before he glanced over material nature, there was no material cosmic creation. Therefore, his glance is not material. Material mind or senses were unborn when the Lord glanced over material nature. Thus, evidence in the Vedas proves that beyond a doubt, the Lord has transcendental eyes and a transcendental mind. They are not material. His impersonality, therefore, is a negation of his materiality, but not a denial of his transcendental personality.
Yeah, I mean, when the Upanishads say something like he has no eyes, no arms, no legs, that means he doesn't have any material eyes or arms or legs. It doesn't mean he doesn't have arms or legs or eyes, but no material. So he is a person. He has all the features of a person just like we do, but they're not material, they're spiritual. Brahman ultimately refers to the personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman realization is just the negative conception of the mundane creations. Paramatma is a localized aspect of Brahman within all kinds of material bodies. See, we have a soul, and it's inside our heart. Actually, the soul, the Atma, is 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair, and it's located in the heart area. And also within the heart is the super soul, the Paramatma, that's just talking about here. That's thumb high, and it's also situated in the heart. They're like two birds. It's compared to two birds sitting in a tree. They're not Kassing, though. They're just two friendly birds. One bird is eating the fruit of the tree, enjoying the material world, and the other bird, the stronger, smarter bird, is just witnessing the other bird, and he's waiting for the smaller, spirit soul of the individual body to turn his attention to him, because the Supreme Soul, the Paramatma, it is aware not only of our own individual body and what the feelings and pains and pleasures and thoughts and feelings and emotions are, but he's aware of everybody's thoughts and feelings and pleasures and pains of all the living entities, all the trillions of living entities in the entire universe simultaneously. And he knows everything. So that's a smart bird. Ultimately, the Supreme Brahman realization is the realization of the personality of Godhead according to all evidence of revealed scriptures. He is the ultimate source of Vishnu tattvas. Go ahead, Melissa.
The Puranas are also supplementary to the Vedas. The Vedic mantras are too difficult for an ordinary man. Women, Sudras, and so-called twice-born higher castes are unable to penetrate into the sense of the Vedas, and thus the Mahabharata and the Puranas are made easy to explain the truths of the Vedas. In his prayers before the boy Sri Krishna, Brahma said there is no limit to the fortune of the residents of Vrajabhumi, headed by Sri Nanda Maharaja and Yasodamai, because the eternal absolute truth has become their intimate relative.
Go ahead, Zoe.
The Vedic mantra maintains that the absolute truth has no legs and no hands, and yet goes faster than all and accepts everything that is offered to him in devotion. The latter statements definitely suggest the personal features of the Lord, although his hands and legs are distinguished from mundane hands and legs or other senses.
Brahman, therefore, is never impersonal, but when such mantras are indirectly interpreted, it is wrongly thought that the absolute truth is impersonal. In other words, when they say he has no material arms and legs, that people think that it's just to distinguish his features and his attributes from material. If we think that he's just like us, he has a material body, then we're mistaken. He's got a transcendental body. Any of his senses, he can see with his ears. He can taste with his legs. Any one of his senses, any one of his limbs can do any other thing from any of his other senses. So we can't do that. So we're different from him. His body is full of knowledge and bliss, and our body is temporary, full of ignorance and miserable. Let's see, where am I?
The absolute truth personality of Godhead.
The absolute truth personality of Godhead is full of all opulences, and therefore he has a transcendental form full of existence, knowledge, and bliss. How then can one establish that the absolute truth is impersonal? Go ahead. I guess it's Melissa.
Brahman, being full of opulences, is understood to have manifold energies. And all these energies are classified under three headings under the authority of Vishnu Purana, which says the transcendental energies of Lord Vishnu are primarily three. His spiritual energy and the energy of the living entities are classified as superior energy, whereas the material energy is an inferior one, which is sprouted of ignorance.
Okay, so
the energy of the living entities is technically called Kshatranya energy. This Kshatranya Sakti, although equal in quality with the Lord, becomes overpowered by material energy out of ignorance and thus suffers all sorts of material miseries. In other words, the living entities are located in the marginal energy between the superior spiritual and inferior material energies, and in proportion to the living being's contact with either the material or spiritual energies, the living entity is situated in proportionately higher and lower levels of existence. So like in between, where it gets confusing, sorry.
where are you at?
I just ended higher and lower levels of existence. I just was trying to figure out like what this means. Like,
Yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead.
sounds like what they refer to as limbo, like that in between world or whatever you call that. I don't know if that's the same. I don't know.
The living entities are, which you're talking about, the living entities located in the marginal energy between the spiritual and inferior material.
The marginal energy, yeah. Like,
so, yeah, there's two energies. There's two energies. There's a spiritual energy. We're superior spiritual energy, but the material energy, the material world, there's three different modes of material energy. There's goodness, passion, and ignorance. And when we're connected, when we think we're the body, we're influenced by these modes. Krishna is always above the modes of nature. And we can see the difference between us and Krishna is never affected by the modes of nature. He's always above the modes. And he tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, rise above these modes, be free from all these modes. So if we are thinking about our friends or family, or we're connected or attached to any kind of sense gratification, we're influenced by the modes of nature, either goodness, passion, and ignorance. And those modes are the symptoms of one who is attached to these modes are described in the Bhagavad Gita. But so that way, the living entity is marginal in that he can be affected by the modes, whereas in our pure spiritual nature, we are above the modes and we're not affected. We're just surrendered to Krishna and totally, and therefore we're not affected by any of the modes of nature. We're just free and happy because we're connected to the spiritual nature. If we're in passion, in mode of passion, we're like striving for sense enjoyment and we want so many things. And if we're in goodness, we're thinking that everybody is, in goodness, you can think of philosophical things and kind of see everyone as equal. In ignorance, you're just like dull, and you're always in the mode of ignorance, and you're angry and you only think in one direction. You can't think of anything else. But, so there's different modes, and those are all described also in the Bhagavad Gita. So in that way, this living entity is caught in the middle, and he has a choice. He can either surrender to Krishna and then be affected by the spiritual energy, or he can, surrender to his own senses and be selfish and then be affected by the material modes. But nobody is free from any of these things. You either have to choose the spiritual or the inferior energy. And so that way we're marginal. We have choice. And so we can be controlled by either of those two energies, this material or spiritual energies. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that makes sense. Yes.
Okay, the Lord is beyond the inferior and marginal energies as above mentioned, and his spiritual energy is manifested in three different phases: as eternal existence, eternal bliss, and eternal knowledge. As far as eternal existence is concerned, it is conducted by the Sandini potency. Similarly, bliss and knowledge are conducted by the Hladini and Samvit potencies, respectively. As the supreme energetic Lord, he is the supreme controller of the spiritual, marginal,
Chick, you're
and
freezing up.
material energies. And all these different types of energies are connected with the Lord in eternal devotional service. Hladini is the internal potency of the Lord. These are different potencies of the Supreme. And the different aspects, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, are connected by different energies that are all within the Lord. You know, the bliss potency is the Hladini potency. Bliss and knowledge is Samvit potency, and eternal existence is Sandini potency. I mean, these are just words, you know, we don't even know what they mean, but if you hear these Vedic aphorisms, you'll understand what they are when you're connected. When you understand who Krishna is, and when you hear it enough times, you'll understand, oh, okay, that's this mode of nature, or that energy of the Lord, and everything will be explained and it'll make sense, because it's all coming from one source. It's coming down through disciplic succession from teacher to student, and we're just mouthpieces. You know, we're just reading this, and the knowledge is coming actually from the spiritual world. We're not really, you know, we don't have anything to do with this. We're just opening our mouths and reading. But this knowledge is coming down. If we read it long enough and pay attention to what it's saying, then we'll understand everything. Everything is there. All the material and spiritual worlds, everything that we are, all the aspects of Krishna, how to develop a relationship with him and be happy forever. That is all within this science of Krishna consciousness. Go ahead, Melissa.
Thank you. I'm sorry, where did we leave off?
I think we left off
now.
At the Lord. Did I read something? No. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. You start reading the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
And I think, that's right. I think that's right.
Okay, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is thus enjoying his transcendental eternal form. It is not astounding that one dares to call the Supreme Lord non-energetic. The Lord is the controller of all energies, and the living entities are parts and parcels of one of these energies. Therefore, there is a gulf of difference between the Lord and the living entities. How then can one say that the Lord and the living entities are one and the same? In the Bhagavad Gita, also, the living entities are described as belonging to the superior energy of the Lord. According to the principles of intimate correlation between the energy and the energetic, both of them are non-different also. Therefore, the Lord and the living entities are non-different as the energy and the energetic.
The reason Prabhupada is talking about, isn't it astounding that one dares to call the Supreme Lord non-energetic? See, he's talking with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who is like a Mayavadi. He follows the Sampradaya of Sankaracharya, and they kind of like want to kill Krishna. They want to strip him of all his qualities. They want to say that he doesn't have any arms or legs. He doesn't have any qualities, because they're frustrated with the material world, and they think that everything is Brahman, and they want to merge into the Brahman effulgence of the Lord, and they just want to commit spiritual suicide by doing that. And so they say that the ultimate truth must not have any qualities, and must not have any energy, and must not have any feelings or activities. And so therefore it's just a very envious description of the Lord, and it's actually very offensive. And if you listen enough to this Mayavad philosophy, it kills your spiritual life, because Krishna has all kinds of energies. He's the controller of all energies, and living entities are parts and parcels of one of those energies. So we can't be fooled by people that want to commit spiritual suicide by saying that, it's just all one and we're just the same as God, and, there's no relationship then. God is a person, we are also persons, and we can have a relationship with that supreme person by hearing from the authorized scriptures and from his representatives that have already seen the truth. And that's what we're doing right now. quote, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego are all inferior energies of the Lord, but the living entities are different from all as superior energy. This is the version of Bhagavad Gita 7, 4, and 5. Go ahead, Zoe.
Okay. The supreme. Where am I? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Is it earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego are all inferior energies of the Lord, but the living entities are different from all as superior energy. This is the version of Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, you can read the second paragraph too.
Okay. The transcendental form of the Lord is eternally existent and full of transcendental bliss. How then can such a form be a product of the material mode of goodness? Anyone, therefore, who does not believe in the form of the Lord is certainly a faithless demon, and as such is untouchable, a not to be seen persona non grata, fit to be punished by the Plutonic king.
I don't know who the
mean like
Plutonic
Pluto?
king is.
Yeah, like what is that like?
The Plutonic king, that must be the devil or something. But yeah, that's a pretty strong sentence there, you know. Faithless
I love
demon,
that description.
untouchable,
I know,
persona non grata. If you don't believe in the form of the Lord, see, that's what Prabhupada was very strong about the Mayavad philosophy. You know, some of his beginning devotees, even my own spiritual master, was like wondering why he was so. But that's like our disciplic succession. They had to fight against this kind of philosophy because it's even worse than the Buddhists. The Buddhists rejected the Vedas, but the Mayavadi impersonalists, they accept the Vedas, but they have their own imaginary philosophy that kind of strips Krishna of all his personality. So it's really you know, if you don't believe in the form, then you're a faithless demon. You know, he's not pulling any punches here. Okay, the Buddhists are also called atheists because they have no respect for the Vedas. But those who defy the Vedic conclusions, as above mentioned, under the pretense of being followers of the Vedas, are verily more dangerous than the Buddhists. Go ahead, Zoe.
Okay.
Or is it Melissa?
Melissa. I'm sorry.
Melissa, go ahead. Sridhar Vyasadeva.
I lost where we were, and I thought it said Platonic king. It says Plutonic king.
Plutonic,
Right.
yeah.
Like Pluto.
Plutonic. Not Plato or Pluto. Pluto is like, I think it means kind of like the Satan or something. Go ahead and read the sentence starting with Sri Vyasadeva.
Sri Vyasadeva very kindly compiled the Vedic knowledge in his Vedanta Sutra, but if one hears the commentation of the Mayavada school as represented by Sankara Sampradaya, certainly he will be misled on the path of spiritual realization.
Okay, I just want to say one thing. I think I figured it out because like there's Vedic astrology. So, you know, Pluto is also the planet referred to as a planet of transformation and or death. So I'm just saying maybe that's what they're talking about.
Oh, really? There are different, you know, demigods that are located in different planets. But Pluto wasn't even discovered until recently by the scientists because it's like way out there, you know.
Well, it's associated with death and ultimately transformation. So it could be maybe.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what he's referring to. I'd have to ask somebody that really knows what Prabhupada is referring to when he says Plutonic king. You know, I don't know. But is it your turn?
Yep. The theory of emanations is the beginning subject of the Vedanta Sutra. All the cosmic manifestations are emanations from the absolute personality of Godhead by his inconceivable different energies. The example of the touchstone is applicable to the theory of emanation. The touchstone can convert an unlimited quantity of iron into gold, and still the touchstone remains as it is. Similarly, the Supreme Lord can produce all manifested worlds by his inconceivable energies, and yet he is full and unchanged. He is purana, complete, and although an unlimited number of Puranas emanate from him, he is still Purana.
Purna.
Purana.
Yeah, like
Purana.
there's one pastime where Sanatana Goswami, he was one of the Goswamis of Vrindavan, and somebody found out that he had something very, very valuable. He had a touchstone, actually, and a touchstone, if you touch iron to it, it turns into gold. It's like the Midas touch, right? And so he asked Sanatana Goswami where this touchstone was, and he asked if he asked if he could have it. He said, "Yeah, it's over there," and he pointed over to a pile of garbage. He'd thrown it in the garbage, and so he got the touchstone out of the garbage, and the guy was thinking to himself as he was walking away, "Wait a minute, how come he had it in the garbage? He must have something even more valuable." And so he went back to Sanatana Goswami. He said, "I know you have something more valuable than this touchstone. Otherwise, you wouldn't have it in the garbage." And so he asked him what it is. He said, "Okay, well, I'll give it to you, but first you have to throw the touchstone away." And so then he threw the touchstone away because he believed in his words, and he gave him the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna mantra. So that's even more valuable than touchstone. Let's see. Okay, we got about 3 minutes left. We'll go through a couple more maybe here. The theory of illusion of the Mayavadi school is advocated on the ground that the theory of emanation will cause a transformation of the absolute truth. In other words, the source of something. If you're the source of the cause of all causes, if you emanate the material world, it'll cause a transformation of the absolute truth. If that is the case, Vyasadeva is wrong. To avoid this, they've skillfully brought the theory of illusion. But the world or the cosmic creation is not false. They say Jagan Mitya, the material world is false, but it's not false, as maintained by the Mayavad school. It simply has no permanent existence. It's real, but it's temporary. A non-permanent thing cannot be called false altogether, but the conception that the material body is the self is certainly wrong. Go ahead, Melissa. We'll read one more.
Well, I do have a question about that.
Yeah. Okay.
What's the difference between that and just like saying that it's Maya, which means illusion?
Maya means that which is not. Ma means this, and Ya means not this. In other words, if you think that anything is apart from Krishna, if you think that this is not Krishna, or you think that you're separate from Krishna, that's Maya. That's not true, because we are all parts and parcels of Krishna. Everything in existence is part of Krishna. And if you think that anything is separate from Krishna, that's Maya. It just doesn't exist. That conception is false because it's not true. Anyway, does that kind of answer your question? We've got about less than 2 minutes here.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't understand what Maya is then.
Maya means not this. Maya means Maya is the conception that I am separate from Krishna, or I'm not, that I have my own existence apart from Krishna, and I'm not connected to Krishna. Krishna is the soul of our souls. And if we think that we're separate entities from Krishna, or that he's not a person, or that he's somehow or we're not connected to Krishna, then that's called Maya, because everything is connected to Krishna. He's the cause of all causes. How can he be separate from anything if he's the originator of everything? In other words, if you have a gold ring, a ring comes from the gold mine, but that doesn't mean it's not gold. So if you said it was not gold, then that would be wrong, because it is gold, but it's just a different manifestation of gold. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for somehow or other getting on. I think we're going to do the links from now on, because the other thing didn't work, but you two got on with the links. So I'm just going to continue with the links. So thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you next week, I hope.
Watch out for that storm. All right. See you guys.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.